Yo, welcome to Millennial Scrimmage YouTube. Today, I want to go over the deck that I won my first Team Challenge qualifier with. Now, first off, if you would like to go back and watch any of the games, they're all live on Twitch. I streamed everything on Twitch, so I'll have the link to that specific VOD down below in the description. You can just fast forward to any of the games. But I won with Sableye, Weezing, etc. And I want to talk about not necessarily a ton about the deck, a little bit about the deck, but why I chose the deck. And hopefully that will help to inform you for your own Team Challenge qualifiers. Now, I will also have down below in the description a link to find tournaments for the Team Challenge qualifier. Maybe this is the first time you've heard about it. Maybe you forgot it was happening. I highly recommend everyone do it. The pricing is pretty darn nice. For sure, you get a qualifier playmat if you qualify, and some stores do give away packs. The store that I am going to be playing for, Tabletop Village, shout out to our sponsor right up above. If you're in Seattle, check them out for sure. Or if you're on TCG Player, check them out. But so we're going to be playing for, they do give away the box to every one of the qualifiers. At least they have in the past, and I assume they're going to do it again. We'll find out for sure. But you can get packs, you can get codes, and you get a playmat for qualifying. So I think it's definitely something you should do. And you get to compete. Competing gets you more prizes, and it is a heck of a lot of fun to play on a team with other people. This is the deck that I played. You may be saying, Mello, why did you play this deck? That's kind of what I want to focus on, my decision and why I chose this deck. Maybe you've already done your first qualifier and it didn't go well. Maybe you have your first one coming up. Maybe you missed one and you're going to come in. Would I recommend this deck to you? No. Well, maybe. I guess it depends. I chose this deck because it is the one that I played the most amount of games with. It is the one that I enjoy the most. Those are the two biggest things. The first qualifier for me, yes, I wanted to go try hard. If you go watch the stream, you'll notice it is the least interactive I am in the middle of the games because I'm actually trying. Official Pokemon event, I want to give my best. So I picked the deck because it is fun, and I think it is very good. I also know my local meta to an extent, which is an advantage I have because we do have IRL locals. So you have a bit of an idea of no one at my locals plays Rapid Strike Urshifu. That matchup is abysmal for this deck. So got a little bit of an insight there. Another thing that I chose this deck for, like I said, is that I can play it incredibly well. I will always recommend everyone, Team Challenge or a League Cup or a regional even, know your deck inside and out. A lot of people will talk about like, oh, the good players can pick up any deck and do well with it. That's like kind of true, but give yourself the best advantage. Play the deck that you know the best. I've interviewed several people on this channel or between the podcast or whatever. And the thing that Tord said to me will always stand out the most. Tord is one of the best players in the world, and he will always play a bunch of games with his deck. He will never pick up a deck, it sounds like, the day before. Plenty of successful players do, but the fact that he does it makes me think I want to play my deck the best that I can. So this is a 60 that I played. Not too different from other decks that I've played. A couple differences, though. I played one of the cast forms. Again, no one plays Rapid Strike Urshifu. So I played the colorless one because maybe I would Weather Force. I never used Weather Force, of course, but it's an option. And if no one plays Rapid Strike Urshifu, there's literally no reason to play the other one over it. Everything else was the same. I cut down to one Sableye. Originally, it was going to be a best of 3 tournament, and then we had too many people, so we had to play 5 rounds into a top cut, and no one wanted to do best of 3 for 5 rounds into a top cut that was also best of 3. So we cut it down to 1. But I was originally like, okay, I don't care too much about prizes, because if I prize it in the matchup I need it, I'm probably not going to do that 2 of the 3 games. Also, playing 1 means I'm less likely to start it. And then I played 1 Avery. Avery did its job. In round number 3, I played against Jolteon. Jolteon is a bad matchup for this deck. Your win condition, and if you're curious, go back and watch it. It was a pretty good game. Well, it was a good game because I did what I was supposed to do. Spoiler alert, I won it. But you want to stick Weezing and hope they brick. If they brick, they very often will. Their best case scenario is they hit you for like 100 damage. So they're 2-shotting you with their VMAX while you're poisoning them and they can't find their Cheryls and stuff like that. But you're bricking them. You don't want to Marnie. You also usually don't want to research. Sometimes, yes, you can research your hand, but sometimes you sit there, you're hiding behind Weezing while your opponent's bricking. You can't research. In the specific situation, I had a Raihan and a Sableye in my hand. Those are necessary to win that matchup most of the time, and they turned out to be very necessary in that matchup. So the Avery's in here as a way to draw cards without discarding our whole hand and without disrupting our opponent's hand, because if they're bricking, I don't want to Marnie them. So that's what the Avery's here for. It's also cute against the mirror match, which I didn't run into any. I was expecting to run into some mirror matches. My locals really like this deck. I'm a big fan of it as well. but we didn't run into that. And it's also good against Mew because Mew, they have their Oricorio down. If you can find early game situation where you can Avery them and say, you got to keep that Oricorio there, or else I'm going to KO with my Hoopa. Or you get rid of it, or you keep it, and then you have to get rid of your Genesect or something like that, and it becomes a little awkward for them. So the Avery's also good in that situation. I actually played against no Mews. I know if you're thinking like, oh, Mello, you won a tournament with this deck. How many Mews did you feast on? Literally none. My matchups were round number 1. I played against the Counter Birds deck, so it was Suicune, Galarian Moltres, Galarian Zapdos, that kind of like countery deck. They ended up making top cut too. I beat them in round 1 because this is a very favored matchup for this deck, but they made top cut. So for those of you like, oh, that was basically a free win. It was a good matchup for me, but they made cut. It's a pretty cool deck. Round number 2, I played against Eternatus. They beat me. That is a tough matchup. The Galar Mines, the fact they go VMAX, Moltres VMAX, pretty darn tough. So we lost to Moltres in round 2, and then we won out the rest of the way, winning against Jolteon in round number 3 by doing the Weezing strat. That highly recommend going back to watch the game. It's really the only way to win that matchup. There's no hard fought battle. You got to brick them. Round 4, we played against Gengar VMAX. We beat them. Always a fun one. Again, Weezing does its job. Weezing is a very, very good card in this current format. Round 5, we ID'd, and we are into top 4 with a record of 3-1-1. Top 4, we played against Eternatus, but my opponent actually had to go do some homework. So they dropped. You'll love to see it. Better to be lucky than good. And then in the finals, we played against fellow Twitch streamer Senior_Doom and friend. And he played Gengar VMAX. It was a very fun matchup, actually. It turned out to be a lot closer than it usually is. Doom is a very good player. So would I play this deck again? Yes. If I had not won the tournament, I would have played this deck again. I really, really, really like this deck. I think it can beat everything in the format. And if you go back to watch those games, multiple times, I had pretty bad starts. Sometimes I had the gas starts where like everything was perfect, right? I had a couple of games where it was just like not very good starts, but it didn't matter. Playing a single prize deck means you can have mediocre starts and you will eventually stabilize and be just fine for the rest of the game. That's one of the reasons I really like this deck. Mew, you have a bad start. Sometimes you just lose the game depending how bad the start was and what matchup you're up against. There's very little hate for this deck. The Jolteon matchup, I think it's actually about a 50-50. It feels bad because when you lose big, and when you win, you kind of are just hoping that they brick, but it's probably a 50-50 matchup. So really it's just Rapid Strike Urshifu, and for this specific list, Duraludon's tough because we only have the one Sableye, and we have the 2 stadiums, but it's a little awkward because they Avery us, and they can Crystal Cave, and they can Yell Towel, and all that good stuff. If they play a PCL, it's also a little worse. If they don't play a PCL, not terrible, but with one Sableye, that matchup becomes significantly worse for sure. And Zacian Zamazenta is a bad one, but otherwise, if you expect Mew, you expect Gengar or any single strike, anything like that. You expect Ice Rider's a pretty solid matchup. Not amazing, but pretty solid. Suicune is definitely beatable, mostly because, again, you can just kind of Weezing them, and Melanie decks don't like Weezing. You can definitely buy several turns through that. So if you're expecting those types of decks, I'd suggest playing the same thing. I think it's good, but my biggest suggestion for the team challenge is play the deck that you know, play the deck that you like, have fun. And yeah, that was a quick rundown. If you want a more detailed tournament report, I'm happy to do it. But I just wanted to give some quick advice on why I chose the deck I chose, give you the list that I chose if you're curious in playing it. I think it was a lot of fun. And if you want to go watch those games, check out the Twitch VOD down below. And I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.